Today, I have the privilege of having the stars and producers for a phenomenal film, Paper Tiger. I have stars Lydia Look, Alan Trong, as well as producer Pin-Chun Liu. Thank you so much for being with me here today. So much to talk about. I got to talk with Paul yesterday, and that was phenomenal, and very excited now.
Thanks for having us.
Great to have you, man.
Yeah. So I want to start with this is very interesting because I thought we were going to have Edward be the protagonist, and then it went to Lily, and then back and forth, and then when I realized I almost called it a dual protagonist type film, and it was done so well. Can you talk a little bit about how both of you prepared for this role, because some of the things that they were going through were so deep, and things that probably for the character took decades to develop. How do you prepare for a role like that? Lydia, we can start with you.
It was important for me right from the start to bring a level of truth to this film. I knew that no amount of acting was going to, fly in this film. So I decided early on to have a really good relationship with the actor who was going to play my son. And it happened to be Alan, and I met him maybe 2 weeks prior to principal photography. And I just completely, went full force in having a real relationship and getting to know Alan, in that 2 weeks, because I wanted that level of authenticity when we started filming as mother and son. And I really went full force as Mama Bear for 2 weeks prior to, I practically smothered him.
Nice. Alan?
Yeah, I mean, to piggyback off of what Lydia was saying, yeah, she really played that role and held my hand. I felt very, excuse me, protected by her and Elaine as well, the actress that played Aunt May. And yeah, as far as like preparing, I took some movement classes to try to tap into the bit where he finds comfort in becoming a bird. And hopefully it helped. And yeah, just really just reacting off of the amazing cast. It was, with a subject matter like this, I tend to get very, as a lot of actors, like imposter syndrome of like, oh man, like I'm gonna suck, like what am I doing? And then like I show up on set and just react off of the amazing cast, and everybody really made it feel safe to just play. And I definitely felt safe as soon as I stepped on set,
Pin, can you talk a little bit about balancing Lily's story, Edward's story, and really to make this cohesive piece of artwork, especially, I mean, within 19 days, I know that you guys shot this fairly quick.
Yeah, so it actually, I'm sure Paul maybe I mentioned that early on, we even try to see if we can also tell the story more from Aunt May's perspective. So it becomes kind of like a three. But yeah, like soon after we start developing the script, it feels like it's really just, the mother and son, and then we start focusing on the two. But one of the big things we were trying to focus is just because I like stories and movies that are not totally just like black and white. There's a lot of kind of, gray area that we want to encourage people to talk about. So it's just with perspective, but without a lot of judgment, to really understand why this huge tragedy happened. So to bring insight to the audience for kind of into the mindset of what Lily, like, what would really make her be in the position where she had to make that decision. But then also we want to bring in Edward to know that yes, he has his own thing he's going through, and is also kind of just unfortunate it was in that position dealing with what he had to deal with at like not even 18, grief, losing the father, trying to figure out identity, out of internal conflict, which is very hard to do it well in the movie. So I was very glad that Paul and our amazing cast, like everybody from our team, really are on the same page in terms of what kind of story and that we're trying to tell here. And so, yeah, that's kind of one of the big thing is to not, I guess, yeah, to not just like cast judgment and to present their situation and what they do as human in this story, and to kind of, so that when audience watch this, we can all reflect a little bit of how we treat people and how we see these difficult issues. And so, yeah, I guess a lot of reflection. So just kind of trying to portray these characters as authentic as possible. So yeah, that's kind of what we were trying to do.
So I really think that their characters are layered so well, especially because relating to them. My parents immigrated from both Mexico and El Salvador. I remember growing up, and I remember how important the unit was. Everybody had a job. Everybody had to do a certain thing because some things weren't necessarily allowed for whatever reason, language barriers, etc. And I can't imagine what it would have been like if one of those pieces was taken away, one of those pieces of that fully working machine. Lily had to then run a business, had to raise an adolescent boy who's going to turn 18. There's just so much there. Can you talk a little bit about how important is that kind of representation in the film as that family unit?
It was truly realistic for me because that situation presents itself in every family unit, and more so importantly in every immigrant family unit. It becomes even more important, as you said, because everybody has a role to fulfill. The younger generation who speaks English will have to, overtake all the responsibilities that come with English, including doing the bills or translating, and then the mother and father figure who probably doesn't speak the English will have to uphold the whole task of looking after the family, right? So I think this situation, like you said, I think you struck it right on its head, becomes even more pressing and more prevalent when it comes to an immigrant family, because everybody has a role to fulfill. And I think in this story especially, everything comes crashing down at the same time. That's what do you do when everything comes crashing at the same time? And I think, like any proverbial strong woman, Lily attempts to take the world on her shoulders, rather than asking for help, which isn't a thing really in Asian culture. Asking for help is probably going to be the same as begging for something. If you have anything, always just swallow the bitter and do it yourself. So I think she was she was very courageous. She was trying to just keep everything together. But no man is an island, and they can't do everything by themselves. So,
absolutely, I agree.
Yeah.
Alan, I want to talk a little bit about Edward's communication with her mom. With his mom, I just feel like could maybe some of the things that were going on, and I hate doing sometimes the woulda, coulda, shoulda, because it's kind of irrelevant, but kind of as a lesson to maybe open up a little more to talk with his mom. And if it didn't feel like he could, what could have she done a little differently?
Thanks for that question, man. I think first and foremost, speaking for myself, as a child of an immigrant, it's hard, man. It's hard to, I'm sure you can relate. You just opened up about being half Mexican and El Salvadorian, you said. Yeah, there's a certain family dynamic with being born in America, but then trying to like find identity within that which I think Edward experiences with immigrant parents who are just in survival mode, And it's not that it can seem or feel sometimes from Edward's point of view that his mom doesn't see him or love him or whatever, doesn't get him. But the truth of the matter is, like, she does love him, and that there's just certain incapabilities that she had, or that there's just like a disconnect of just being an immigrant and then being born in America. And it's hard, man. I mean, you know how it is. It's a tough road to navigate, and I was just glad to be able to play scenes through Edward's point of view, to even just like explore the Asian American experience, especially being a child of immigrants, but yeah, at the end of the day, it's like the foundation of it is love. It's just unfortunate, like in the story, that there was a lack of communication, because it coulda, shoulda, woulda, whatever, but it's a tough space to navigate, man. You know how it is. It's but I think we are moving forward by continuing to tell these kinds of stories and not not sugarcoat it, and pay attention to those kinds of relationships. I think that's really important in like storytelling, is paying attention to those types of relationships, because it feels pretty life and death sometimes.
Thank you for that answer. I appreciate it. Pin, I want to ask you, was there ever a conversation about maybe including a bit of what their family, what life was with their father, or was it always the idea to just begin from that moment on?
Yeah, so we had a few kind of not so much of like their family life. The story did started with when the family already when the family kind of started to fall apart, the first thing that crumbles down. But we did shot a little more with the dad, but at the end we kind of decided that it's really kind of the aftermath, and then start with more things crumbling down. So we kind of bring those in the few flashbacks with the dad and Edward, and also with Edward's kind of hallucinating the dad to show the relationship he has with his dad. And I was just gonna add to what Lydia and Alan already said earlier, that like I grew up in Taiwan, pretty typical like Asian family, that we don't really talk or communicate any emotions. And I'm also now a first generation immigrant here. I have a little son that was born like last year. So I'm kind of really, I feel like I made this film, a lot of it for myself selfishly, because to really remind me, and I think for us, it's just like, yeah, we want to encourage people to have that communication, and always at least start talking to the people and be more open, so that we don't make the same mistake like what Lydia was saying, like trying to put everything on myself, like learn how to ask for help. And I feel like that support is really important, and it's also what's kind of lacking for like first generation immigrants, that you don't, all my families are in like back home, there's nobody here, so you kind of, it's very easy to fall into the isolation. And especially now, obviously we all went through the pandemic and really kind of know how that could feel like, the isolation and hard. And so yeah, I think that the kind of the father in our particular story was kind of that person who was able to keep at least the communication in the house more open. But unfortunately he passed. That's the first guy. But yeah, so that's kind of what we ended up deciding to just kind of subtly use this little flashback, because we thought that was kind of enough to give you an insight, and we didn't want to pay too much attention, since there's also more dramatic stories that follows the event. But yeah.
Lydia, Pin, Alan, thank you so much for your time. There's a couple of things I wish we can talk about, but we do not want to spoil the movie. Phenomenal work. I loved it very, very much. And I think it's funny. It's not funny. What is interesting is that, yes, this is an experience told from an Asian perspective, but as a Latino, I related a lot to it as well. So it's interesting that it doesn't necessarily matter where you're coming from, but that experience of an immigrant coming to the United States and having that tradition versus American disconnect is very, it's very a normal thing to feel.
Yeah, absolutely.
Man, thank you for providing this platform, even just being open and whatnot. Thank you, brother.
Thank you for talking with me. Hope you all have a wonderful day, and I hope to talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.